You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. If I sound tired on this show, it's been a rough 24 to 48 hours. I'm not going to dive into it too much, but when you have a loved one go to an emergency room, and I'll say right now, that loved one is fine now back at home, and the problem was solved. But when you send a loved one to an emergency room, and they essentially need a CAT scan, blood test, urine test, and an MRI, and it's a level 1 trauma center like Christ Hospital, you don't expect them to live in a hallway for 24 hours because they can't figure out how to get the test done. And that's what our experience was. Absolutely brutal. Ed, if I'm laying on the side of the road, I'm missing a limb and I'm bleeding out, take me anywhere except for Christ Hospital in Oak Lawn. Anywhere. Cross them off the possible sponsors. Advocate, Christ Hospital, never. I couldn't say anything nice about him after the weekend.
If I have the good fortune of being the one to stumble across you in a ditch on the side of the road, I will keep that in mind.
Right, leave me to die. Use leeches. I have a better chance of survival. That's how I felt. All right.
If I happen to be the one that has caused you to be bleeding out on the side of the road, I wasn't going to take you there anyway.
Finish me off at that point. I'd rather just be finished off. Don't let me go the way that it felt like you could go while I was there.
No, I respect you enough after knowing you for almost 30 years to at least mercifully end it for you.
Listen, so. I was born there. I used to think of that as like, that's where I'm going. Don't send me there. Send me someplace else. Little companies right down the street in Evergreen Park. Send me there.
Well, born there, die there, circle of life.
Yeah, you're going to be born there, and you're definitely dying if they bring you back on a bad night.
It's
now,
convenient.
While I sat there and I was part of the shift of people that were staying at the hospital, I was keeping up with what's going on at the winter meeting. So I am attuned to what is going on. And I am very interested in this Garrett Crochet talk. Let's jump into that first, and we'll get to Mike Tauchman, who's joined the team, and now they have a real right fielder. There's all kinds of chatter going on around the team. They've got their staff picked for Will Venable. Guess what? It's the same guys, so we'll get in there as well. But let's talk first about Garrett Crochet, because John Morosi from MLB Network seems to be the guy that's on this the most when you're watching all the coverage. He's got the Red Sox, which is interesting, because that's who I said, right? That was my gut feeling. It's going to be the Red Sox. They match up the most. Right. They need the most pitching. It makes the most sense. And now he's saying that along with the Red Sox, Brewers, and we can get into what they have, Cubs, we've already gotten into what they have. That's a possibility. Mets are in on everybody. But the Red Sox are now supposedly totally okay with including Marcelo Mayer in this deal. Now, if you don't remember this guy, this is one of the top draft picks a couple of years ago. This is a 21-year-old shortstop. This is a guy who hit over 300 in Double-A. This is a guy who's expected to make it to the majors. And before you say, but we already have Colson Montgomery, I want every shortstop that's high-end, high pedigree, high ceiling you can possibly put on my team. Because shortstops can go to second. Shortstops can go to third. Shortstops can play the outfield. Shortstops do pretty much everything. So bring me as many of those as possible. Those are the most athletic players you have. That's how you build the team. I don't know what we're waiting on if Mayer's already included. Like Morosi basically said, they'll give a Mayer for Crochet. It's what else is going to be included. And I don't know what else is included in that deal, but that feels really close. And if they pull that off, and that's the kind of talent they're going to bring back, major league ready guy, like he actually mentioned the possibility you could see Kyle Teal, another AAA player. He's a catcher. Like they're wavering on Christian Campbell. I think the White Sox want him, but the Red Sox may not be willing to give him up. But there's several guys that are right on the cusp of joining the major leagues that the Red Sox have that are position players. That seems to be exactly what Chris Getz wants. And if Mayer's included, I'm a little excited.
Yeah, and Mayer, if you're wondering about Mayer versus Colson Montgomery, just look at what Mayer's scouting report says. Bigger and slower than most shortstops, so the top question surrounding him is whether he'll play the position on a long-term basis in the majors. What that means is that, like you said, he's an athletic guy, right? But maybe he's better suited to third base.
Right.
Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that because you're getting him for his bat and you're getting him for the fact that he can field a position. He's still a very good fielder. He just may not have Montgomery's range. He may not have the the quickness that you want to see out of your middle infield.
He's got to find the power. If he's going to be a corner infielder, he's got to find the power because he looks like a guy who's going to hit 10 to 15 home runs, and they need to do better than that. Now, again, Double-A, he's going to get to Charlotte in the bandbox and watch him hit home runs. If he doesn't, then that's a problem.
Right. Yeah. If it's 15 home runs in Charlotte, it's an issue.
Right. This is a guy who looks like could develop. He's right behind Montgomery. Montgomery's playing short. Like, that seems to be really obvious. Like, Chris Getz basically is saying, like, we like him over at shortstop, and you know, it's almost like he's suggesting we're probably not going out and getting any help in the infield because we intend to either start the season with Colson Montgomery there, which is odd given his season last year, that they're basically like, well, see what he's doing in the Arizona Fall League? He's ready. This may be a mistake, but it seems like that's the direction that they're going in. If he doesn't start the season, he's going to play the majority of the season there at short. So if they go get Mayer may be the second baseman of the future. That he may be the third baseman of the future. He's going to be something of the future, but he's a piece that you bring back, and they need bats, young, ready to go bats. Getz's mantra so far when speaking at the winter meetings is, we want somebody who can accelerate the timeline to us to get better. We're looking for position players. We're looking for position players that are close, ready at the majors right now. And so it's everything that we've said on this show now for over a year. This is what they needed to look for when they were going to trade players. This is what they need to acquire. We don't want to sit around and wait forever for a single-A guy to develop. I don't care about your ceiling. I want the guys that have made it through the majority of the minors and have shown they can use the stick, because when they get here, we need them because we don't have enough offense.
Well, and here's the other thing, too, is that the Boston Red Sox, and we talked about this when there was some poo-pooing of an earlier possible trade that had Wilyer Abreu, had Tristan Casas, had Connor Wong, had a bunch of their rookies that came through. That was the last wave of their top prospects that came through. And they've got service time. So what? They've got service time. They're all pre-arb.
They probably get one of those in Mayer. That's probably what the deal is right now. They're trying to find one of those guys. They're trying to add Mayer in there. They're trying to get another prospect. That's probably what they're trying to figure out package-wise.
Well, and what I'm guessing is that Getz is probably trying to hold out to see if he can get 3 or 4 guys as opposed to 1 or 2, and push to see what's there for the Red Sox. Also, if he is getting serious offers and there's competition, you don't jump at a Red Sox offer just because Marcelo Mayer is there. Not saying that Marcelo Mayer is not the prize, not saying that, but if there's another package that is floating around out there that teams are looking at, Garrett Crochet going, there's this guy. There might be some guys that they've scouted that they like better, and whether or not that's going to be a mistake, honestly, we can get into that. But
their level of talent with the Brewers is not they can't have somebody that's position player. Like, I don't think that there's a package the Brewers can give right now that's a bunch of major league ready bats. Like, their guys that are close are mainly pitchers.
Yeah, and Getz did say that he wants position players, but if he gets a quality pitcher back, that's not necessarily a bad thing either.
Right, like the Cubs match up better than the Brewers. The Red Sox seem to be the best match, or at least the ones that are trying to push the hardest. At least that's what I'm picking up. And they need more than one rotational arm. So if they don't get any of these big free agents that are floating around right now, they're definitely going to go all in on Crochet. If they get one of them, they probably still want Crochet, but they might look at Getz now and start saying, well, we really don't need one. And then you get that gamesmanship of, well, this is all we can give you. And him seeing, do I really want to hold out here? Can I keep another team involved enough to make the Red Sox nervous?
Yeah. And so what you're looking at really is with like the Brewers, for example, you're looking at Jefferson Caro, who's a catcher. You're looking at Tyler Black, who's a guy that doesn't really have a position, but is a high level bat that the Brewers don't have a whole lot of room for because they've got guys like Sal Frelick that are moving around. There's the guy whose name escapes me that they picked up in the Corbin Burns trade. They were happy with him. They've got some guys at the major league level, again, that are young. So if the Brewers are sitting there saying, okay, Caro, who's a good hitter and way better defensive catcher than Edgar Caro, all right, and I don't think there's any relation between Jefferson and Edgar, but you're looking at him as maybe he's a catcher of the future type too.
You have 2 Caros on the team? That's the plan?
2 Caros. Well, and Edgar Caro, all that means is that Edgar Caro could move positions, right? if you take him off of catcher, because that's the thing that's going to hold him back is his bad.
But that's
defense.
The thing, though. What you're talking about with the Brewers is a catcher and a guy who doesn't really have a position that would stand at first base. I don't know what you put around Mayer, but I'd rather have him.
Oh, me too.
Something else I'd like is for you to reach out to Hyatt Home Medical Equipment when it's time to switch to a new age of life. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living. Make it so they can get around on their own and live independently. Hyatt's got stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling. They work with insurance and have 0% financing for qualified individuals. If you use a CPAP machine, not only do they have testing rooms and the best and latest technology, they also will get your supplies directly mailed to you. They have the latest and greatest in continuous glucose monitors and much more as well. See everything Hyatt Home Medical Equipment has to offer at hhme.com. Like, to me, when I hear Morosi say that the Red Sox are willing to trade Marcelo Mayer in the package for Garrett Crochet, I have a hard time finding anything on the Brewers that I could put together that's better than Mayer and fill in the blank.
Yeah, it becomes intriguing with, Tyler Black, who's not a power hitter enough to really warrant being a first baseman. He's got to be an outfielder. Or Jefferson Caro, who is a catcher that may or may not be ready this year, and you may be working on building around him in the future. There, you're going back and you're getting more pitching, right? Because there you're looking at what they have in like a Jacob Mizrachi, Robert Gasser, who was up for a while with them last year, or like a Brock Wilken, kind of a guy who can, who's another slow hitter, big slow guy on the field, but a good hitter. So
yeah, I don't want that. I don't want it.
It's not. That's the thing. Like, it's not a more intriguing package than anything Marcelo Mayer. I'm sorry, if Marcelo Mayer's coming here with
anything,
Rafael Cedane, who's kind of a multi-position guy that's on the Red Sox roster and had some ups and downs in his rookie year, but showed a lot of talent and could be an outfielder for you, could be an infielder for you. He played both. I'm looking at that going, okay, those two guys alone are better than anything I'm seeing with the Brewers and are more interesting to me than Spencer Jones or George Lombard Jr., who is, years away, and Jones is only in Double-A for the Yankees, or really anything the Mets. And the Mets, all I've seen the Mets are going to offer is Jet Williams, who is close as a guy that's, again, infield, outfield. And then they really want to trade Brett Baty, who has had two cracks.
That's the next Miguel Vargas.
Yeah, he's had two cracks at it with the Mets, and he's been bad both times. His minor league numbers look fantastic, but he gets to the majors, and all of a sudden he can't hit. So
you don't want that, and that's the thing. And you hope that Chris Getz learned his lesson with Vargas coming over. That, hey, if a guy gets a whole half a season, it doesn't matter what his pedigree is, maybe he's not that good at the plate. Like, they're not going to give up on that guy. They're going to give him another opportunity. But the chances of him working out are less and less as time passes with him. Like, I understand the pedigree, but there's plenty of guys that have pedigree and look good in the minors and are high-end draft picks, and they get to the majors and they fizzle. And you don't want another guy like that. And Baty, again, what the Red Sox have is exciting. What the Cubs have is exciting. The Mets are going to be involved in everything because that's what the national media does. The Yankees and the Mets, they're involved in it all. They're going to be involved in every trade rumor. It doesn't mean that it's real. It really feels to me like it's the Red Sox. I would bet that the Cubs are actually second in the Garrett Crochet sweepstakes, just looking at what's going on. Now, meanwhile, the White Sox went out and got a right fielder. And it was interesting because Getz had said early in the winter meetings, I want a right fielder. Tale as old as time as a White Sox fan, right? Like, well, we need a right fielder. Of course we need a right fielder.
Right.
He goes out and gets Mike Tauchman. Now, he played for the Cubs for the last couple of years after a stint in the Korean League. And this is just in case anybody who's out there listening hasn't really kept track of this guy. Now, his year 32 and year 33 seasons were with the Cubs. And during those 2 years, he compiled a win and a half above replacement each year on average. But his OPS was 732, which was above league average. He had 250. He gets on base, 360 on base percentage over those 2 years. That's 751 plate appearances. And he's on base at a 360 clip. He's also slightly below average defensively. He's going to be better in right than he would be in center. He's played all three positions out there, but he's a professional baseball player you're paying $2 million to. And this is what they're going to sign. The cheapskate who's in the owner's box is not going to use the money that he's saving from last year. I mean, this payroll could drop $30 million and sit at $90 million. He'd have plenty of money to spend. And it seems like Chris Getz right now is bargain shopping because Jerry wants to go out there and do worse payroll-wise than the A's did last year at, I think, about $60 million or something like that. So that's disgraceful, and it's awful, but that's the way that things are going right now. He at least went out and got a real outfielder, though. Like, this guy's legit. This is a guy who figured out something in the Korean Baseball League. He's in his 30s, but he's had a nice couple of seasons of playing professional baseball. He's a real outfielder. And now, barring any trade, Benintendi, Robert, and Tauchman are out in the outfield. The guy that they picked up, a couple of weeks ago, right? Austin Slater, he could end up in a platoon with Tauchman in right field. And then you have all these young guys.
And a platoon of Benintendi.
Right, but you have all these young guys then. You have Jokes still on this 40-man roster. You have Dominic Fletcher. You have Zach DeLoach. And what I like about this is more along the lines of what my philosophy has been stated for years. I understand that you go and you acquire a guy. You get a young guy like Fletcher. You get a young guy like DeLoach. The problem that this team has had for years is you go out and acquire a guy and you pencil him into a position and then you just hope it works. He stays healthy and he develops. And if he doesn't, there's no backup plan. And I know there are some people who are like, all right, it's a lost season, let the kids play. I want the kids to earn a spot on the team. If you can't play better than Mike Tauchman, then that professional baseball player is going to play 1 year at $2 million out in the outfield, and you don't make it. I don't like the idea of handing young guys jobs. And that's something that happened in the last rebuild, where they sat there and they said, okay, you're young, you just have a spot. That's what the problem is with Colson Montgomery right now. The idea of saying like he's in the mix at short and we expect him to play there, and just these indications in the way that Getz is talking, like he's basically going to be the shortstop, if not opening day, very early on in the season. I would love for them to have a plan at short that they can move off to the side. They are not spending that much money. There's somebody there they can put there that's a professional shortstop. They can put in the place that they can go and find, and then Montgomery's got to take his job. And I love that when there's competition. You get to the majors, you got to earn your spot. It should not be handed to you. That's development. And also, you get a guy who gets on base at this clip. And that's the same thing that Slater is. Slater's pretty good at getting on base. They're clearly done with the idea of guys getting up there, whiffing, not having productive at-bats. They want guys that get on base. They want some kind of stability in the order while they develop these younger hitters.
And that gets back to having Ryan Fuller brought in as the batting guru, and the idea that they're going to have an offensive identity throughout the organization. And if the offensive identity is going to be one of, well, let's say it is, the guys that are high on-base percentage guys, even if it's a low batting average, but it's always going to be, guys that will get on base, guys that will be there offensively. And you have an offensive coordinator in Grady Sizemore. I don't know what that position means, but if they're looking at this from the standpoint of get guys on, get guys over, maybe be more aggressive on the base paths, since that's what the rules are really promoting after last year, doing all of that, getting a guy like Tauchman, getting a guy like Slater, trying to find a veteran that's out there that can do that for you so Colson Montgomery has more time to develop. Or, we've posited maybe it's a Brooks Baldwin, has an opportunity to take it from Colson Montgomery in spite of the difference in pedigrees. Maybe there's some guys that we haven't thought of yet or really even considered that might be brought in that are not high priority free agents along the lines of an Austin Slater or a Juan Soto. And Chris Getz will man that position with a veteran if he needs to. But it is going to be an interesting thing to see how this team shapes up now and what they do, because Luis Robert Jr. is also still getting some interest, and Getz sounds like he's a little surprised that teams are actually making waves with it that are somewhat legitimate. At least that's the vibe I got off of Getz's comments.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the interesting thing. Like, you wonder if that is... He had somebody give him an offer that he thinks is close enough, and he needs that person to come up because it's not good enough.
Right.
And he's trying to say, well, we've got a couple people that are asking, and I'm surprised that people really view him the same way that we view him. And I was told those people wouldn't view him that way. And that's some gamesmanship there. Like, here's the thing. I think there's a better chance that they move on from Benintendi than they move Robert, because I think Robert Jr.'s price is going to be higher. I think they're going to expect more for him. I think Benintendi's getting moved as a cost-cutting move. It's not like he's an inept baseball player, and it's not like he can't live up to that contract next year.
He had a really good second half. Benintendi looked a lot like himself, found more power than he's shown in a long time in the second half. If you think about it, he went on a tear with home runs. And so there's value there. And you're right. For the White Sox, he's a money dump, but he is also a guy that starts to, you question if he really fits what Chris Getz has said his mold is. Benintendi, from a bat standpoint, is who he is, but he's not good defensively. And you don't want to be tied to him. And if you're looking at an outfield sitting and going, I would rather have Slater and Tauchman on the either side of Robert, or Fletcher or Deloach or one of the young guys come and take it from one of those two veterans, and not have to worry about Benintendi. I'm actually wondering if Benintendi stays, if he ends up spending more time as a DH than as an outfielder.
I think that's a good chance. Like a lot of people, I've seen some people that were like, oh, they went and got Tauchman. You look at all these outfielders they have on the 40-man roster, like they're probably trading Luis Robert Jr. I still don't think they're going to get the price that they want for him. I do think that they want to move him, though. Like they do. I think that Chris Getz, I'll go back to it. I think that Chris Getz and the powers that be, and if you look at who he took to the winter meetings, that's who the powers are. Right? He brought his hitting coordinator, he brought his pitching coordinator, he brought his manager, he brought his manager's bench coach, and he brought himself. That's who's there. That's who's going to be there making the selections for the Rule 5. Like, hey, who can we pick? They got the number 1 pick in the Rule 5 draft. Who can we pick that's going to stay on this roster and play in the major league level? Do we think this pitcher here is worth something? Is there a position player that we actually think would be a nice utility infielder or could actually go stand at short in case Colson Montgomery isn't ready yet? So we'll give him a shot. Like who do you think that you can work with? That's what those guys are there for. And he's got his evaluators with him. You got to give Chris Getz credit. He brought the group that matters to the winter meetings. He has his pitching guru, he has his hitting guru, and he is leaning on them because that's why he put him in that place. He brought his manager because then his manager can get out in front of the microphones. He's a new manager. He gets to talk. He can talk about philosophy. He's just kind of getting him out there. He brought his bench coach, which I think is a great thing. Let those two guys work together and smile and be proud of the fact that they're now the new number 1 and the number 2 on the bench of a Major League Baseball team. That's his group that he brought there to evaluate talent. And I think that if you don't fit what those guys want to do, you're not part of the plan long term. I don't think that everybody in that group is keen on the way that Robert Jr. disappeared last year. And I don't think that group is a big fan of Andrew Benintendi when they have all these restrictions put on money-wise from Jerry Reinsdorf. One or both could go. I still think it's Benintendi, though, because I think that they're going to get a reasonable offer from him. He does not have a crazy deal. He had a nice second half. He has more of a track record as to what he is than Robert Jr. Robert Jr. is the swing at the stars thing. Like, we believe that 2023 is just the beginning of him and not like a blip, because otherwise there are always injury-plagued seasons and the weird drop-off that you saw last year. So I just don't think you're going to get what you want to get for him. I think he stands in center field. I do think Benintendi likely, possibly, isn't on this team anymore. There's a lot more to come when it comes to the outfield, I think, for the Chicago White Sox. Sox in the Basement listeners trying to make the most of your money. Give a call to Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor. Located on the corner of 111th and Kedzie, but serving the Chicagoland area, Tom has a get-to-know-you approach and a do-the-right-thing attitude. He's been doing this for decades. It's all about knowing your options when you're investing and planning for your retirement. No matter what stage you are at, it costs nothing to check in with Tom. Give Tom Walsh, your Edward Jones financial advisor, a call today, 773-779-0023. Edward Jones, member SIPC. When it comes to the coaching staff, I saw this list that got put out by the White Sox accounts, and my initial reaction to it, I still believe. I mean, I had a lot of people who were like, yep, that's exactly how I feel. And then I had people that tried to justify what the White Sox did. But my belief is you get a new manager and you're trying to tell me that he quote unquote decides to keep the hitting and pitching coaches that he never worked with coming off of a 121 loss season. That is the most White Sox thing in the world. Now, I don't think that's Chris Getz. I am more than sure that Jerry Reinsdorf's policy within the White Sox is if I hire you to do a job, then that's your job. And that's why Marcus Thames is back. Because he's not going to pay for a guy to sit on the couch at home when he doesn't believe it matters who the hitting coach is. And I really think that that's what this is. He is so cheap that, and before somebody says, why does it matter? I'll tell you why it matters, Ed. I will always go back to this for anybody that says, why does it matter if Venable has anything to say with his staff? I'm not saying he should come in and change something. Like if Bannister's like, Katz is my guy, Bannister gets to go over Venable. He gets to sit there and say, no, I'm the pitching coordinator. He does what I want him to do. Nothing leaves, right? But you have a new hitting coordinator, and you can't tell me that Fuller's like, oh yeah, I want Marcus Thames. This is all I want. I have no other options in my head. And you can't tell me Venable's saying that too. That's what's weird. That's the name that sticks out to me, okay, is that we're not making any changes when it comes to the hitting when you brought in a hitting coordinator. That's weird to me. And I think what it signals to anybody who comes onto a staff, whether it be your Major League Baseball coaching staff or the staff at one of your corporate offices, if the guy who's your boss has nothing to do with whether or not you have the job, the loyalty and the responsibility you feel to him will be lacking. I can only look at my time moving into different towns doing morning radio, right? Much like a manager would come in and take over a team. When I came into a town to do a morning radio show, very rarely did I ever allow somebody who was already part of the show to stay. Very rarely did I let somebody who was part of the station that was going to, or that management wanted involved, did I want them on the show. And when I either caved or it was forced upon me, it always ended badly. I was in Reno, Nevada. I had this girl that I guess used to hang wallpaper that may or may not have dated the station manager, that had somehow ended up on the radio, that thought herself to be a star, and they were paying me 3 times the money of what she was making. But because of her connections to the station, they wanted the name of the show to be Gina and Chris in the morning, even though I was making 3 times the amount of her. And when she tried to do it on her own, her ratings were terrible. So they hired me away and brought me out to Reno, Nevada. Now, she knows I'm making more. She knows I'm there because she failed at it. But she never, ever wanted to work with me because she didn't feel like she could be fired because she wasn't part of my team. I didn't handpick her. Everybody else on that morning show I handpicked, but I didn't pick her. And no matter how much I tried to work with her, she didn't want to work with me. I was told, you're the boss. You choose what you do on the show. You do everything. But she didn't need to listen to me because she was from the last regime. She was under a contract, and they're like, we'd like you to work with her so we can just continue out her contract. You know how it ended? It ended with her one day getting frustrated because she wasn't in charge, live on the air having a breakdown where the entirety of Reno, Nevada listened to it, and then storming off. And when she went to the bosses and said, clearly you're not going to get rid of me because I was here before him, they fired her. But not after that giant disaster. And I have multiple examples throughout my time. When you come into a place and somebody puts you in charge, and now all of a sudden you're a head of a staff, which is what it was like when I would do that job, and somebody gets held over that believes that management will protect them and that you didn't pick them, somebody else picked them, it changes the dynamic. Look, I get you're going to hold over some guys if they're successful. Fine, you consult with the manager, and as long as the manager is good with it, that's okay. I can't see the connection of Ryan Fuller to Marcus Thames or Will Venable to Marcus Thames that explains it other than we're just not going to have a guy go home and sit on his couch. He's the hitting coach, so he's staying. 121 losses and a terrible offense. He's staying. We're going to change how Andrew Vaughn hits. He's staying. That's confusing to me.
Well, and it just shows me that one of two things is going to go on there. Either A, really Marcus Thames is sitting there as the hitting coach, but your offensive coordinator, because there's no passing game, there's no running plays to diagram here for Grady Sizemore. He's not doing blocking schemes. So I don't know what an offensive coordinator does exactly. But my guess is that the philosophy is going to be passed through Grady Sizemore. Marcus Thames is just there, like you said, he's being retained, but really what the hitters are going to be told is listen to the offensive coordinator. This is what your job is when you're at the plate, and this is your approach. Because a lot of it is mental, okay? There's physical, mechanical stuff that goes on with hitting, of course, But most of it is mental. I mean, Yogi Berra's quote has been run into the ground about how mental the game is. I don't think that the White Sox problems last year were mechanical with their hitting. There was clearly, they just didn't know what they were doing. They did not have scouting reports on pitchers. That's been exposed. They were not able to, be put in a position where they were going to be allowed to succeed. That much is true. Some of it was they just didn't have enough talent to basically consistently get offense going because you didn't have anybody that was really stepping up. You need a couple of guys that can really hit the ball out of the ballpark. They didn't really have that. You need some guys who can set the table. You have that now, Mike Tauchman, by the way. A guy that can get on and help with the on-base percentage and stuff. It was a poorly constructed roster.
So maybe just keeping the devil while you're making all these changes. That's what you're kind of looking at.
That's the best case scenario, isn't it? The best case scenario is sitting there saying Marcus Thames has a spot on this team. There's certain things that he will coach, but when you have a weird position like offensive coordinator for Grady Sizemore, and when you have Ryan Fuller in place as your guru for the entire organization, it's entirely possible you're just sitting there saying that, yeah, we're paying the guy to be here. We see some value in what he brings to the plate, pun intended, but realistically, we also don't think that he is the key to, or he is going to be given enough control of these hitters to really make a difference and really screw anybody up or really even help anybody. So he's just sort of there.
I'll give him a pass then, especially because we both mispronounce his name. I'm going with Thames. You went with Thames. According to Baseball Reference, it's Timms. This is how little I pay attention to the hitting coach.
Now his name is Marky Tommies. Okay.
maybe. No. His actual middle name is Markley. Marcus Markley Timms.
Marcus Markley
Timms.
Learn
something about the hitting coach. Yeah, he's going to stick around. If he's going to stick around, we might as well learn more about him.
Okay.
Marcus Markley.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.